Nigel Franklyn is the self-described spa whisperer, but more accurately, he is a person who lives a life of artistry and takes leaps of faith into the unknown. His global career as a spa and wellness aficionado began when his life was changed by a spa therapist in Atlanta, Georgia, who in one service gave him such an overwhelming feeling of nurture, safety, and surrender that it changed the trajectory of his career and his life. He knew from that moment that his life would be devoted to bringing that sense of nurture and well-being to people all over the world. His paintings, too, like his work in the spa and wellness worlds, are bold and brash, yet they tell a very personal story. A story of a man who lost his parents as a teenager. A man who stepped into the essence of his identity at 6 years old when he declared he wanted to marry Superman. A man who believes that to receive the benefits from something or learn something, you must surrender to the process, because in the spaces of surrender, we find faith, belief, and hope. Hello and welcome to At the Podium with me, Patrick Huey. At the Podium is a multimedia platform that brings together people from a diverse background of lives, careers, and experiences who all share one thing in common. They have stepped fully into the transformative power of finding and raising their voices to make an impact on the world we live in today. At the Podium holds a space for everyone to share their stories, to be heard, and to bring us inspiration. Today, I'm thrilled to share the podium with Nigel Franklyn. Recently named Hall of Wellness's Global Wellness Personality of the Year, Nigel Franklyn is the Spa Whisperer, a unique visionary, wellness influencer, and veteran of the global luxury wellness industry. He is renowned for his innovative approach to both concept development and wellness design. He has worked extensively around the world with some of the most iconic luxury properties in the industry, including Four Seasons George Cinq in Paris, the Siam in Bangkok, and Amman Resorts. Nigel has joined forces with some of his greatest friends and colleagues to create Moss of the Isles and Moss Wellness Consulting, a collaborative and synergistic merging of decades of knowledge and experience and a deep-rooted passion for authentic, conscious wellness. Nigel, welcome to At the Podium.
Hi, Patrick. How are you?
I'm good. And you're in Munich, so it's late.
I am. It's 5 o'clock at night, but Munich, we always have beautiful blue skies, so it stays lighter here longer. Blue skies and 0 degrees.
Well, it's blue skies here and about 70 degrees. So
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for making time to chat with me today.
Hey, my pleasure.
Do I have this right, or did I see you on the Tamron Hall show recently talking about your dream job?
You did. Yeah, you did. Live across America in a spa robe. You did, yeah, last week. The segment was finding your passion. Are dream jobs real, or do dream jobs exist? But yes, you did.
It's interesting because you were asked once by a reporter for Yahoo if you were sick of being on the road because you travel so much within your consultancy. And you responded, which is perfect for what you just did with Tamron Hall. You said, "I have completely manifested my dream life. How can I get sick of something I created? This isn't even a job anymore for me. Sometimes my friends ask me how I can put my life on hold and travel so much. I tell them, my life isn't on hold. This is my life. I'm having a mad love affair with the world, and the world is having a love affair with me right now."
Do you know that Yahoo interview was, I think, probably 6 or 7 years ago, maybe a few years more.
Mm-hmm.
Every word remains the same. Yeah, I don't get it. Like at some point, I always kind of expect this. I mean, look at the Tamron Hall. I mean, they approached me as someone who's manifested this kind of dream. Yeah, airports, planes, love it. Always. I mean, it's been 25 years.
How did you get into this industry? Because you started off working as a journalist in the UK, and then you end up working in San Francisco, and now you've sort of manifested this life in the global
Yeah,
luxury wellness industry.
yeah.
How did that transition happen for you?
So I had this dream that I'm originally from the UK. I tell everybody my body's from the UK, my heart is from San Francisco, my soul is from San Francisco. I lived there for 30 years. But I had this dream that I wanted to move to San Francisco and become a writer. And that's what I did. But I was out in Atlanta, just outside Atlanta, Georgia, to do something on the opening of a spa. And I had this treatment with this therapist. And I remember everything this therapist said and did. She made me feel safe and wanted, which for various reasons I really had never experienced those feelings before. I remember the way she looked, her lipstick color. She lived in the house she was born in. You know, her name was Margaret. I called my dog Maggie after her. But I left there and I wrote. I didn't write about the treatment or the spa. I wrote about the experience of surrender and how one person can give another person the opportunity to just give into the process and feel safe. So I became a therapist because I wanted to give that to the world. And then I then changed that into consulting because I realized I was one person and I needed an army of therapists around the world, making everybody feel safe and wanted. And that's what I did. I traveled the world for many years, teaching therapists empowerment and I would say kind of emotional intelligence, but that might be a stretch because they already have that. But just really teaching them how to create a moment of surrender for each of their guests. And then, you know this, you've been in this industry a long time, it's the same as me. This, the trajectory of this industry just went crazy and my career got caught up in the vortex of it. And now I'm creating and designing spas and hotels. Well, I mean, I called the Spa Whisperer, but really it should now be the Wellness Whisperer. The Spa Whisperer was back when I was doing spas. Yeah, so now I'm creating and designing concepts and experiences and spas and wellness resorts for some of the biggest names in the industry.
You said that when you were at this place in Atlanta, that it let you surrender. And I think that's interesting because I wonder if that is why today, after the last few years, spas and wellness have really just skyrocketed. They were already, these industries were already doing quite well post-pandemic. We can't even keep up with the demands for our business. And I wonder if it's something within that area where people finally need a place where they can go and surrender. And if that's really what is driving this whole move
Look,
spa and wellness.
I'll tell you this pandemic, I think, has taught us two very valuable lessons. The first lesson it taught us a lesson of our own mortality, certainly. The second lesson that it's taught us of the fragility of society, like how easily all of this can go away. And what that has done, I think, is shone a light on these kind of core requirements that we went through this as a human race collectively. We all went through it together, and then certainly in my lifetime, that's never happened before. But I think what it's done is given us an opportunity to shine a light on really the fundamentals, the basics of what it is that we need, and that's kindness and hope and faith and opportunities. And I think it's brought us, this sounds very romantic, it has brought us back, I think, to a level of humanity that didn't exist before, but also a level of recognition that didn't exist before. So the recognition that I need to feel safe. We had so many elements of the pandemic, the last of which was we were allowed to see our families finally, but we weren't allowed to hug them. And it's the antithesis of human nature. And to even experience that, what that does to the human soul, that needs to be nurtured. And in order to nurture something, you have to get it to a space of surrender, because that surrender is where the therapy lives. That's where we get to really do our best work, when we're not engaged in the battle with self or the battle with other people, when we've just surrendered. My sister always says, trust the process. And the surrender is really the trust in the process of it.
Yeah, I think there's something in that. I interviewed a gentleman recently whose daughter was diagnosed about 10, 11 years ago with cystic fibrosis. And he said one thing that he learned in that process was the responsibility, the need that he had to learn how to surrender. And that when he was able to surrender, that's when he was able to really address his own feelings about her sickness and address her feelings about her sickness. So there's something in that surrender that I think is quite powerful.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I say this a lot, but I believe that I create spaces of surrender. I mean, that's really a focus, like how a spa is just bricks and mortar, right? And the spa awards celebrate all bricks and mortar, but there's something more integral, and the exchange of energy that happens within the spa that really creates something transformative.
Mm.
But what's water shiatsu. Water shiatsu is my favorite spa. Is my favorite treatment because it's what happens out of the water before you get into the pool that is the important part. Because if you do not surrender to your Watsu master, then you have a stranger holding you underwater, and you miss the point. You're in order to really get the benefit of Watsu, you have to without the surrender, Watsu doesn't exist. And so the Watsu master, of course, there's the training for the Shiatsu movements in the water and the breath, but it's really what happens, the exchange of energy before you get into the pool, the trust, the surrender. That's what I want all therapists. I want all therapists to Watsu every guest. I always say this. That would be the ideal life that I would live, would be where people are Watsu'd every day.
Now you have to explain what Watsu is for the people who don't know what Watsu is.
So Watsu, Watsu, it's water shiatsu. So you have a therapist in the water with you, holding you, and there are various weights, little floats on your feet. It's very womb-like. It's very emotional, and they're doing these beautiful, soft shiatsu stretches and turns in the water. But then the second phase is the water dance, where the therapist actually syncs with your breath and is able to take you under the water. And they know when you're breathing in and breathing out. And so it's like this underwater dance. And it's one of the most emotional experiences because it's the antithesis of what you feel like you should be doing. And so the surrender part of that, the trust, and is so key that when you're in the water, it helps that it's obviously fluid and you're feeling like you're in the womb. But other than that, it's this surrender to the process that is so emotional. It's just such a beautiful experience for people. I don't build anything. My business partners will tell you I don't build anything now without a Watsu pool in it. Got to have one.
It's a beautiful service. It's a beautiful treatment. Do you think, and I struggle with this in my walk through this profession that we're both in, and this really beautiful treatment that you just described, this beautiful service of surrender, do we run the risk of this industry becoming too elitist? Because I would love for everyone to be able to experience that type of release, it's almost a once in a lifetime thing to teach you like that in a Watsu pool. But do we as an industry walk that line of this is something that only really wealthy people can afford to do?
I think the easy answer to that is yes. Health is a human right, and whatever it is that we can do to present exchanges, environments, and experiences that promote health and overall well-being, mental, spiritual, physical. But I mean, I'm very conscious of that because I create luxury wellness environments, but I'm also very mindful. For example, I have a big project in India, and part of the concept foundation is give back. So I find sustainability and regeneration in the projects that I have by using the project in India, for example. We're using companies that train women in the villages, and so I always find a way to give back so that I'm not living in this elitist bubble, but I find ways to give back through concept pillars. Certainly, just to support communities and to support minority groups and impoverished people. So it's not always living this life in this kind of elitist bubble.
I think it's really important because there's so many people who live in food deserts and nutrition deserts because they don't live in the right zip codes or in the right towns or the right neighborhoods. I think this idea of wellness has to have legs that can transcend one's ability to spend $300 on a massage or even more on a beautiful treatment that you described, such as Watsu. I think it's incumbent upon our industry to figure out how to really make this more available to more people so that people can all experience the benefits of it.
I agree. And there's not such a large movement to do that, especially kind of in my bracket of the industry, which is why I kind of find my humanity in the give back part. But I believe fundamentally that what we're doing changes people's lives, and it doesn't mean that only rich people should have their lives changed. So it's imperative, I think, that we find a way to not scale the experience down, but certainly scale the pricing down so that other people can share in the experience.
There's an interesting quote from a gentleman named Edward Teller that you have quoted before, which I love. And the quote from Edward Teller says, "When you get to the end of all the light you know, and it's time to step into the darkness of the unknown, faith is knowing that one of two things shall happen. Either you will be given something solid to stand on, or you will be taught how to fly." Why is that quote resonant for you?
I've lived with that quote my entire life. My parents died when I was a kid, and that's why I get quite emotional. My parents died when I was a kid, and um, I it has been my direct experience. I have spent my life jumping off cliffs, and I still do. Um, but when I think back throughout my life, and I think of all of the hands that have been extended to pull me through something or lift me up, or the experiences I've had where really I've survived them myself. Like I jump off cliffs now and I don't worry because I really believe fully, just from my direct experiences, that either I will find something soft to land on or someone will teach me how to fly, because that's just my life's experience. I read that quote when I was a kid, and I read it with hope. And
Mhm.
now I read it with experience, um, because it's how I've lived my life. And when I first read it when I was young, I just thought, I wonder if this is true. Like, I wonder if I can. I wonder, and it's true for me. It's been an experience of cliff jumping and hand holding and self saving as well.
You came out when you were 6 years old, and you and I
Correct.
are about the same age. And so that would have
Yeah.
been radical in the 1970s. Were your
Yeah.
parents alive when you came out?
I told my mum that I wanted to marry Superman. Um, and I was fortunate. I'm the youngest of five. I have a gay brother who's 10 years older than me. And so he was already out. So this wasn't my mum's first time at the rodeo, certainly. But in retrospect, my parents died when I was 14. And in retrospect, I feel just really just effing blessed that like she got to know the core identifier of her son, like
Mm.
really like who he is at his vibrating essence. Um, and that's a gay man.
When your parents passed, do you think that contributed to your need to find a place to surrender and to be safe, and then to be able to give that to other people?
Yes, 100%. 100%. I mean, when I had the experience in the spa in Georgia, when I tell you I just had never experienced that before, I had never experienced the feeling of nurture. Or at least, obviously when my parents were alive, I did. But the feeling that a stranger could make me feel safe and wanted, um, to say that it took me by surprise is an understatement. Like I came away from there. It was a metamorphic experience for me, spiritually, emotionally, physically. I mean, it really gave sustainability to this kind of life of hope that one day I'll feel better, and it sustained that hope.
Hmm.
I only met her once. I'll never meet her again, deliberately, probably at this point. And I feel like my life has been a testament to what the influence one person can have positively over another. Because
Does
my
she?
life is a test. No, she doesn't know anything, and I will never say the spa ever. It just that has to be just my experience and mine alone.
So she has
Like,
no.
not she has no idea. And I called my dog after her, for God's sake.
Wow.
Yeah, but that has to just be. She has to. That feeling is my mantra, and I won't meet her again, um, because I have this kind of it was a pedestal moment. She's a pedestal person for me.
Hmm. You also paint.
I do.
That painting behind you. How did you find painting?
Well, I paint. This might just be a collection of stripes and colors. but actually I paint using numerology and color symbolism. And so while this might just seem like stripes to you, it actually tells a story. So all of my paintings, I use the same format in terms of colors and numbers, and they're always stripes, but they all tell a story. And recently, one of my best friends, she lost both her parents in the space of a week. It was just tragic. And I painted her story of recovery. But deliberately in the middle of the painting, I've left one stripe white, which represents grief. But, and I've said, when you're ready, you're going to tell me a color, and the two of us will paint that stripe together. And that's going to be the ending of this phase of grief and an acknowledgement that life is going to go on for you. So these are kind of, for me, they're kind of living, breathing stories. For other people, they just look a bit psychedelic. But I don't know how painting found me. I've painted a lot, but the storytelling came in the pandemic, and I needed an output for my creativity. And so, in Munich, we don't live in a huge apartment, but I turned my office into a painting studio. And because the other thing with these, but like, you know me, I have to be bold, big and bright. And so these paintings, even though they tell personal stories of people, they also represent me in how kind of brash and somewhat kind of unsophisticated and bold they are. And that's kind of how and I like the fact that I always say I'm organized chaos, and my art is also organized chaos, because it looks chaotic, but in fact it's very, very structured and very organized. And that's me.
Do you think you live an artistic life? I mean, you sort of built a life that is paint brushes and paint strokes and colors.
Yeah. Yeah, I do live in it. I mean, part of the job, I mean, I'm really fortunate. I have business partners who, one of them, for example, was the European spa director for Four Seasons. And so she comes with a very operational background, and that's kind of her passion. But she's also very creative. I'm not an operational person. I mean, when I say that I'm organized chaos, I mean, I'm organized chaos. She's not. So I kind of spend my life in a creative sense of the design structure, the design of content. So yeah, so I think that even the projects that I have, I consider them to be art, because it's creative, thinking of pathways for people to find whatever this kind of, wellness is amorphous, right? It means a million different things to a million different people. So you can't just paint over the colors and cultures of the entire planet with a concept. So it has to be fluid, and you have to find an art in many ways. The physicality of art is also fluid. And so I think creating these experiences for me is an extension of this kind of very artistic life that I lead. I mean, my sister, years ago, my sister said, she said, when you die, I'm going to stand up at your funeral and I'm going to say, my God, he lived. And she said, that's all I'll say.
Mm.
And I think about that moment a lot, because I was like, she sees me. And I think art for me, just another way for me to express that's more, even though the art is for other people, it just feels much more personal to me.
Mm. What has been your biggest leap of faith so far? You leave the UK, you come to the US, you're pursuing journalism, you have this amazing experience, you leave journalism, you travel the world. What part of your journey has been your biggest leap of faith so far?
When my mom died, deciding to live, or understanding that I would be okay. Everything else, after that decision, everything else has been child's play for the most part, because it comes from such a profound experience that it will be okay. That okay, well, what else is going to happen? So I would say that my biggest leap of faith would be deciding that I was going to live.
Was there a doubt about that?
A big doubt. Like I was in, I how granular you want to get, but I found my mum's dead body, and so I had to deal with grief and then trauma on top of that, and it was the trauma that stayed with me for years and years and years, and it was just not something I could see my way out of, and it took me a long time to make this decision that okay, I tell my friends if they lose their mums, I say, mums never leave their kids. They change in how they manifest, but they never leave us. And that's been true of my life. But I think yeah, I mean, it was just, there was a doubt. I mean, I was a very sad and lost kid for a long time. And
Mm.
I had to, yeah, I had to, I learned that, I believe now that your behavior mirrors your belief. So you cannot change your behavior without changing your belief. And for me, my belief was that I somehow deserved this, or I couldn't get over it. It was so dark. And that's how I behaved. And I had to work on my belief, not only just my belief in myself, which sounds kind of cliche, but my belief in the experience of that and what that meant. Um, and just the belief that my mum, my mum doesn't leave me. I've got pictures of her, like, she's present she just lives in my heart now. But
Mm.
I had to believe that. I had to believe that in order to recover from it. Um, so yeah, that would be for sure my biggest leap of faith. Just
Mm.
trusting the universe would take care of me, and it has.
Did you feel a shift when you made that decision? Were you,
Yes,
yeah.
because I grieved twice. Once you grieve, it's my for me. I grieved once for my mum, and then there was a moment when I realized that I wouldn't have her back if it meant going through all of that again. Because before that moment, I would have gone through it all again, all of the grief, just to have her back for 5 minutes. And then there was a moment, and it felt incredibly selfish to me, where I thought, no, I wouldn't now. I'm too far into this new trajectory of my life. I wouldn't go back. And then you grieve again, but you grieve again with guilt, because that's not something that you should really feel. But I did feel that. I was like, okay, let's move on now. Let's take a breath and let's go on. But I remember feeling the second wave of grief when I wouldn't change it, and I've got, my fiance, and, I just wouldn't change it. And that sounds crazy to me, but it's true. And so I don't know what to do with that information, but it is that second wave where you become happy in spite of it. And the happiness is stronger than the need to go back and revisit.
Mm. You've traveled the world to some of the most amazing places and had, you know, whipping yourself in jungles and all of that amazing stuff. I wonder what you learned about yourself in the process and what you've learned about the human condition through all of the travel that you've done and the places you've been.
Um, I have learned that I've learned that energy attracts energy, really, truly. I mean, I think, as I say, I live my life in extremes. But I have learned when I'm in cultures that have nothing, they have kindness. And I've learned, when I, it's weird, when I'm in these environments, um, I feel overwhelmed by the kindness of people, of humanity. It always seems like the more you have, the more detached you become from your core kindness. I mean, this isn't exclusively to everybody who has things, but just my travels have taught me that humanity at its core, when faced with poverty, or whatever extremes, um, they find their roots in the kindness that runs through all of us. That's what I've learned. I find myself to be an absolute terrible, terrifying hugger. I hug everything and everyone. It's infuriating to my business partners. They don't hug, but like human interaction for me is so important, because I don't want people to know my name. I want them to know my intention, and my name is irrelevant. I just need to touch people, and that's how I've lived my life. Just because I want them to feel the life force, the life blood in me, and to feel what's important. And what's important is, my energy, my heart, I guess.
Mm.
Um, but that's a lesson learned from being in such diverse places and meeting people that have everything to people that have nothing, and really taking a front row seat of these kind of ebbs and flows of the human experience.
What do you want your legacy to be? You've touched so many lives. You've given people who we've talked about who may not have a lot. You've given them careers and opportunities. What do you want your legacy to be?
Everything you just said. I think, the response that I got, for example, from the Tamron Hall show has been so supportive. And it was just 3 minutes of me goofing off about my career. Um, you know, I go back to what my sister said, but then the legacy would be, my God, he didn't take himself seriously, but he lived. Like, I don't have a professional bone in my body. Everything I say and feel is organic, and it comes out in organic ways. I would say that I'm not a pretentious person. I just want people to know it's important to me that everybody who meets me, that they feel like they had a light shone on them, just them.
Hmm.
I don't know if that's a legacy or not, but I think that's really what's important to me, and that any conversation or interaction I have, ironically, here we are talking about me, but every interaction I have, it really does feel important to me that the people walk away knowing or feeling that there was like some universal sunbeam shining right into their soul. And that's important to me, because everybody has value. Everybody deserves to be seen, and that's it, really.
On this season of the show, I've really been wanting to talk to people who have found their voice or are in the journey of finding their voice. And I wonder, have you found your voice? It sounds like you have, but maybe you feel like you haven't. And if you have, what do you want to say with the platform that you have? You have an immense platform.
I don't know. You would think on the outside, you would think, yeah, I found my voice, but I don't think I have. I don't feel fully realized, I mean, I'm definitely living my truth, but I feel like my truth manifests in different ways. So no, I mean, I was talking with my fiance the other day, and he was like, oh, retirement. I'm like, I'm never going to retire. Why would I retire from this? What would I do? So no, I don't think I think I've created a platform from which, a platform in my career, but also a platform in how I interact with people, because I feel like I am able to deliver information to people in ways that they can receive it. I feel like that's a nice learned experience to have under my belt. But I don't think I've stopped speaking yet. I think it's just going to continue. Look, I mean, we're in this wellness industry, and the wellness industry is exploding and evolving, and I'm not done exploding and evolving. Where this industry goes, there I go with it. It feels like such a celebration to me,
Mm-hmm. Nigel, thank you so much for your time today and for your story. It touched my heart.
Patrick, my love, always.
So appreciate it. I appreciate you sharing your story about your parents and your own personal journey. I know that cannot have been easy, but I just thank you for making time today with me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, my friend.
And to those of you who are watching or listening, remember, we all have a voice. Use yours wisely. Bye, everyone. Thank you, Nigel.